How many of you have ever had a dark night of the soul? How many of you are having one right now? And you'll have some more. And how many of you have a healthy relationship with your dark nights? In other words, as they're having them, as you are face to face with vulnerability and a level of emotion that is uncomfortable, how many of you have gotten to a place where even in hindsight, when you look back at those particular moments, you are not in judgment of them? Or you can look at other people's dark nights of the soul and you can hold safe, beautiful, loving energy and a cocoon of understanding for them because you have been there yourself. They say that the best, the most advantageous part of recovery is when the person actually has the bottoming out, because it takes that level of bottoming out in order for them to set aside any escape mechanisms or excuses that will continue to perpetuate the behavior that is not facilitating their best interest. And so dark nights of the soul can sort of be a bottoming out for us, and we understand that it is perpetual. We also have these great moments of ahas, these times of illumination and these times of great clarity and joy and abundance. And one of the things that we can consider with these two different experiences is that human life then is all about balancing those polarities. Human life is about balancing polarity. And balancing polarity means that you and I must get to a place where then the dark night of the soul isn't a bad thing. It's a part of the human experience. We must get to the place where we understand that that which is the illumination and the joy is not the totality of human experience. It's just something that we get to have and cherish and relish and understand and appreciate. But in the totality of that polarity, we also get to understand that we can do the same thing for the dark night of the soul. But we don't do that. We don't do that. We have a tendency, because it's uncomfortable, to want to cover it up or to hide from that or to deny it altogether or avoid it as much as possible. And when we consider then that we are here and we are constantly exposed to spiritual messages and teachers and books that are telling us what it's supposed to look like and what you are supposed to feel when you're doing it right, and how you get to check off how good your spirituality is based upon your manifestations, then you are spending a lot of time in one side of the polarity. And it's short-lived. And I'm going to dare say that a lot of it is manufactured. Because life in and of itself is full range. It's full range. And one of the things that we, and I'm going to say the collective we, with regards to modern day spirituality, one of the things that we are not well versed and equipped with is looking at this range of emotion and understanding that emotion is powerful. And what we don't deal with, I'm not even going to use that word, what we don't succumb to in full surrender, then stays with us like residue, like barnacles on the side of a ship, which are still there when we are having this aha, beautiful, joyous moment. But we are not fully feeling this because we have not fully felt this. This is emotional intelligence, and this is what we lack. And when I say we, I include myself. Wednesday, I drove to Piedmont Hospital, and I went to see Dr. Pat before she made her transition, and I was sitting with her husband, Ed, for quite some time. And when I was driving back, do you know where SCAD is on Peachtree? And then there's that entryway onto I-85 right across the street. I just turned onto the entryway of that freeway, and maybe perhaps 2 minutes ahead of me, someone had done a complete spin 180, rammed into the median, and it was a brand new Mercedes. and the engine was all the way up to where the steering wheel was. Just happened. And I pulled over, and I called 911, and I'm standing there, and there's this guy visibly shaken. And I said, don't worry, I've called the ambulance. And he's like, I can't afford an ambulance. And I'm like, it's not your concern right now. And I am talking to him, and I'm also taking instructions from the 911 operator, and his legs are pinned in. So I know that I say, can you feel your feet? And we're going through this whole routine until the ambulance is able to get there and the jaws of life are going to come and cut him out. And I don't know how long this went, but you know when you get in that zone, and you're just taking care of business, and I'm in that zone, and I'm talking to him, and the operator's saying, keep him engaged in conversation, and all the while this is happening, no one stops. Nobody else stops, except for one woman who rolls her window down, and she goes, everything okay? And I said, I called the ambulance. She said, praise God, and off she continued to drive. So when they got him situated and they said I could go, I drove back. And it wasn't until I sat at my desk that my hands started to go like that. And I was like, whoa. And I got pissed off at the fact that no one stopped. And then I thought of my message today. And I realized, David, you don't stop a lot of times. You're one of those people who drives by road, everything okay? Praise God. You're just as guilty. Come on. And I started to see the fact that all of this judgment that is inside of us, all of this thing that is unexpressed, just continues to recycle itself over and over again until we get into a mode and a method of understanding that nothing out there is controlling what's going on in here unless we label it and give it permission to. And so one of the things I feel that we are at fault with is we teach this thing called affirmative prayer. And affirmative prayer is there's one power, there's one presence. I call it God. That God is a part of me. I am a part of that all. And then I go into this prayer declaring these specific things. And it's a wonderful tool. However, what we don't teach enough is that before I can even embark upon effectively doing this affirmative prayer, I have to look at the emotional component of me that has not been addressed. And if I don't do that, I will embark over here, and by road I'll go, there's only one power and one presence, and God, in my moment of upset, and I haven't dealt with this. And that will not work. Or it'll work partially. And I will only get so far on the path of my spirituality because I don't know how to fully embrace and have intelligence around my emotional being. So I loved Panache Desai. I loved him so much. I loved that he pushed some of your buttons. And I went Friday night, and I spent Friday night with him because he was back here in Atlanta. And he was hosting a workshop, and he had about 40 people. And he said, come, just be with me. And so we went, and people were talking, and so this one woman got up, and she's telling this beautiful, dramatic, pitiful, awful story. And it's beautiful, and it's pitiful, and you feel sorry for her. And he goes, okay, Panache Desai style, okay. And he goes, so I want you to stand before these people, and I want you to say, I am a victim. And she went, oh, I am not going to do that. And he said, but your story is the byproduct of a belief in being a victim. So why not claim that? I am not going to say that. And she's one of those people like all of us in here who've been taught whatever you put behind the words I am becomes your truth. And so we stick to that, realizing that that's a completely incomplete teaching. It's incomplete. Because the completion comes in being able to say, this is my dark night of the soul. And when I can declare the dark night of the soul without judgment, then my God, the beauty of the illumination is going to be that much more powerful. And he said, come on, say it. Say it. She went, I am a victim. He said, no, say it. Own it. Own it. He goes, what's the thing to her? He said, what's the thing that irritates you most? You know, what traits in people irritate you the most? And she said, I hate whiny, needy people. And he goes, great, say, I am needy. And she, I am not going to. Say, I am needy. And he looked at all of us and he says, how many of you are needy? And everybody put their hand up. How many of you have engaged in being a victim? And everybody raised their hand. He goes, unless you get used to being able to say it and own it, then what you don't own owns you. And he said, walk around the room going, I am a victim. I am a victim. Runway, baby, I am a victim. And let me tell you, that woman had a healing. Because after resisting it and resisting it and resisting it, she finally just went, because she wanted him to shut up. So she did it, and halfway through, she started to laugh. And she goes, oh my God, the thing that I keep talking about, the thing that I keep resisting and hating, that's what I am. I'm the one who drives by, who doesn't stop and rolls down the window going, everything okay? Meaning that we're operating from this surface artificiality that's sterile. And our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote, there's nothing in the universe that limits you. That's both a beautiful statement and one that'll just irritate the crap out of you. There is nothing in the universe that limits you. And every single one of us in this room is guilty of saying that someone or something is the cause of my limitation. But there's nothing in the universe that limits you or that would or could desire to limit you. What component of the polarity is he talking about? He's talking about the soul. That part of us, that illuminated, eternal, expansive thing that knows no boundary, that's not engaged in your history, that has no problem whatsoever in loving and seeing us as perfection. That's the end of this polarity. And yet, we will never fully drink from the fountain of that if we also can't love this. Because all of that, then, the humanity and the divinity need one another in order for us to be able to have this thing called growth. So we chose this. We chose this body. We chose this era. We chose this soulfully in order to facilitate this beautiful journey. But we're still trying to make a part of our choices wrong because we are not in touch with the full spectrum of emotion. And so we're afraid because we're trying to save face, because we're trying to bypass, because we're trying to shortcut, because we're so afraid of what all of the other souls are going to think about us. He says, there is nothing in the universe that withholds from you because in so doing, it would withhold from itself. So we often say that the universe then is a perfect patterning. Perfect patterning. Cosmologically, it's a perfect patterning. In order for it to maintain this idea of a perfect patterning, it means then that all of the elements within the universe must also be perfect. And that means that's you and I. But can you wrap your head around the fact that your perfection is fully alive in your dark night of the soul? Imagine what it would be like if you said yes to that darkness. Imagine what it would be like if you said yes to your irritation. Because you see, when you don't say yes to your irritation then migrates into anger. When you don't say yes to your anger, then your anger migrates into rage. And it's simply because you haven't been willing to own the emotionality of what's going on, or myself as well. When I don't own my sadness and welcome my sadness in, then that sadness migrates into depression. If I don't do anything about that, then the depression migrates into despair. But see, when we become emotionally intelligent, we're not cutting any of those things off. We're just saying, this is where I'm at. I've been angry several times under this roof in SLCA. People are still talking about it. I think 3 times. Because, I'm not supposed to get angry. And I did. I got angry. And there are more times I could have gotten angry, but I'm a minister, so I'm not supposed to behave that way. And there was a post on Facebook by another minister, and it was an article about this well-known Christian minister who just quit last week. And the title was, "Another One Bites the Dust." And he was a very successful, young, dynamic, charismatic Christian minister. He had a huge podcast with thousands and thousands of followers. And he just said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it because all of you, and he's talking about the collective out there, think that what happens here on a Sunday is the totality of what it takes to be a pastor. When it's a 24/7 component. It's a fishbowl existence. And when my colleague posted that article, you should have seen the flood of people going, yes, oh my God, that's me, that's my story. And part of me, when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, and I went, whoa, think about your lesson today. Because in thinking about my lesson today, what I realize is that that's a disease among my profession. What's the disease I'm referring to? I am a victim. You see, in my human life, if I don't deal with my victimization, I'm going to gravitate to a profession that's going to feed being a victim. And now it's going to be conveniently packaged into being a pastor where no one respects me. When it's really all about the fact that I'm a victim. And I went, ooh, I don't want that. And I thought, wouldn't that just burn people's shorts if Panache Desai came and did a convention of ministers and said, all right, everybody stand up and say, I am a victim. Oh my God, their heads would explode. Because this story about, I know, ain't it awful? People just vomit and project all over us. I'm their mama, I'm their papa, I'm their ex, I don't understand. When really, if I'm doing my emotional intelligence, whatever you say to me, or whatever experience comes to me, or whatever experience comes to you, would do what? We would be able to dialogue with it without me taking some unprocessed crap. Because I would have said, there's that part of me that wants to be a victim. If I don't own it, it owns me. I'll pick a profession that will burn me out. And I will get to blame everybody else rather than doing my work. Isn't that cool? Isn't that amazing? And so, how many of you are Harry Potter fans? If you've read the trilogy, in the beginning, you were introduced or you were told that there was this evil presence. In fact, he's so evil, you're not supposed to say his name. Voldemort. Ooh, I just said his name. Voldemort. And if you stuck with the series, what did you come to learn about Harry Potter and Voldemort? They were one and the same soul. What a beautiful way for J.K. Rowling to teach advanced spirituality. She's saying that the actual hero of this story is in possession of that level of darkness that is considered the most evil. And you and I are all of that. We are all of that. But we're not teaching that. we're teaching a sterilization of spirituality that is not honoring the full experience of it. Someone last night said something to me, which is my biggest pet peeve. And I told Tulane, I said, I laughed yesterday at the pet blessing because I said, there's a pet missing, and it's the peeve. If we all brought our peeve, if we all lined up and brought our peeve, then Reverend Lane could do a blessing around your peeve. You know, we bless the peeve rather than keeping the peeve contained and being self-righteous in our peeve, right? So someone came up to me last night, it was a long day, and said, ooh, you look tired. Don't tell me I look tired. I want to educate you. That is a no-win statement. Because if I'm tired, I know that I'm tired, right? I know that the bags under my eyes are really low. And you see, that's my sensitivity point. If I'm feeling good and you tell me I'm tired, then I'm like, well, I must look like crap. I mean, I feel good. Don't ever tell people they look tired, right? And so the whole thing then is, it almost came out of my mouth to this person. And then I said, think about your lesson today. What haven't you dealt with emotionally? What are you not loving? I'm not loving the bags under my eyes. I spend a lot of money on creams and jellies for the bags under my eyes. And none of them are working. And people like Jennifer Earle come up to me and say, there's this new line in MAC Cosmetics. I brought you some. And she brings this to me, and I rush home to use it. And it doesn't work. And now I hate Jennifer Earle. Because I haven't dealt with loving the bags under my eyes. I'm 57. I've earned every single bag there is, baby. So the pet peeve is unprocessed emotion within me. It has nothing to do with what the person says. Whatever is irritating you is because it's irritating you because you haven't processed that level of irritation within yourself. All this judgment. All this judgment. And you see, if Ernest Holmes says there's nothing in the universe that withholds from you because in so doing it would withhold from itself, there is no elected official. There is no job. There is no X. There is no country. There is nothing that is holding anything from you other than what you create the story around. Wouldn't it be great if we all just stood up and said, I am a bullshitter. I'm a victim. One woman, he said, what irritates you? She said, I just can't stand people who lie. And he says, I want you to stand up in front of everybody and say, I am a liar. I'm a liar. How many of you could do that? But every single one of us are liars. But every single one of us are beautiful, sacred beings as well. But when we get so irritated with somebody who's lying, then we haven't fully explored all of the unprocessed emotion that is inside of us. A friend of mine hates zoos, just hates zoos. It creates this visceral reaction inside of him, and he flew to San Diego, and somebody invited him to go to the zoo. And he's like, no, and he's like, no. And the person was saying, maybe you don't know about San Diego Zoo, but their policy is actually that they're trying to work with the animal in order to then put them back into their habitat. And it was like, I don't care, I don't want to go. Seeing an animal caged is just, can't do it, can't take it. Finally, the person convinced him, and he went. And he was visibly irritated. Until he stood in front of this majestic lion. And what he noticed was that everybody else walked by, took a snapshot, and kept going. Meaning to him that people were missing. They were missing the connection of what's before them. And so he stood there and he took that lion in. And he said, all of a sudden, the wall was gone, and it was just the connection with what is. And he likened it to the fact that we've become so sterile that we just keep snapshot, 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 and we don't stop and we don't take it in. Ooh, this hurts. This hurts. Snapshot. Let me go eat something. Ooh, this hurts. Snapshot. Let me go drink something. Let me go eat something. Let me suppress this because it hurts. Rather than, I'm going to feel this. I'm going to connect to this. Because if I try to hide, if I try to bypass this, if I run over here and go, God, there's only one power and only presence, and there's God, and I'm a part of that God, then all of this is crap. And so this talk title was called A New Light of Service. So, ole. A new light of service. How about this? What is service? And what are you and I giving if we're not giving from that place of newness? Newness meaning the connection of all that we are. Can you imagine the good that you and I would infuse into a world if we did our homework, our emotional homework? Then we could travel to these places that are really uncomfortable. Then we can be in situations, we could be in boardrooms, we could be with companies, we could be with people, we could be therapists, we could be psychologists, we could be healers that have helped heal our own emotional wounds. Instead of just surface stuff, surface stuff, surface stuff. That's why people get discouraged. That's why people walk away. That's why people say this doesn't work. Because you see, we get to be right when we do that. We get to try something and we get to, at the end of the day, go, it doesn't work. Because it matches that unhealed emotion inside of us that doesn't believe that anything works, that's futile. It's the little boy, it's the little girl in you that never got seen and never got heard and never got loved, that believes that love in and of itself is crap because we haven't healed the emotional emptiness and the vacuum inside of us. So we're still trying to make something, this or someone or something else responsible for filling that vacuum when we haven't fully loved who we are. In 2006, the world was like just in awe of the Amish because a gunman walked into their classroom and shot all of those Amish children in a classroom. And that evening, the very same day, the parents of those children were in a prayer vigil praying for the shooter, for the shooter's wife, for the shooter's children, praying prayers of forgiveness. And the world was like, how can you do this? What they didn't understand was that leading up to that moment was a cultivated practice of forgiveness. Because in that Amish faith, that's a main tenet. That's one of the things that they constantly focus on. So it wasn't like all of a sudden they just did this spiritual thing because that would look good. It was cultivated. And something is cultivated from a life of shining light onto that. Forgiveness then becomes a practice. And those people had to practice forgiveness over and over and over and over and over again to be able to sit that night in one of the most horrific human circumstances and use their cultivation. Also, the disconnect of feeling is cultivated. If we've gone all our lives trying to pacify or remove the pain without feeling, then that too is a cultivation. So as someone said to me this morning, what you're saying is not something that I can immediately go out and do. And I said, probably not. But if there's a willingness inside of you to begin to look at that, then that same cultivation process now could be with emotional intelligence. And then what we do individually, what we do collectively, that would be some world changing, wouldn't it? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to do anything else but that. I don't want to play this. I want to do this. I want to be this. And as in your face as it might be, I think it's the best thing. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. We have an opportunity to just forgive ourselves, because if we knew better, we'd do better. The thing is that eventually we do know better. Eventually, the knowing and the doing must cooperate. And so we know that it's time now to begin this deeper exploration of why we are the way we are, why we are upset about certain things, why the injustices and the buttons inside of us get pushed, and what sparks that particular road of emotionality. We get to look at that, and we get to consider beginning to cultivate the fact that there's nothing wrong with it, that it's a part of the full spectrum of our polarity. It is the Voldemort to our Harry Potter. We get to love all of the physical flaws that we have judged incessantly. And the moment that we start learning to love it, it begins to cooperate and flourish. And so today, again, one more opportunity. One more opportunity to say yes. To say yes to the persistent finger that beckons us into that which is uncomfortable, that beckons us into the field of vulnerability, that beckons us into the messy, that beckons us into the tears, that beckons us into deeper breathing rather than the shallow breathing that we are so accustomed to. It beckons us to stop and look at the lion and take it in rather than quickly moving on. And if you are willing, that's it. That's all it takes. If you are willing, then just breathe a willing breath. A deep, deep breath. And you're not saying yes to anything else other than your soul. Just say yes to your soul. Breathing in. Just Squeeze the hand of the person next to you to make sure you're not insane. Just to feel just a little bit of connection, just ground yourself just a little bit. And with permission and willingness, breathe in and say with me, and so it is. Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.